2026 is almost here, and if you're an investor or even thinking about becoming one, there's one question you cannot afford to ignore. Where is the money actually moving in America, right now? Because here's the truth. Wealth is not built by guessing, it's built by positioning. The U.S. economy today is massive, roughly $30 trillion strong, and projections show it continuing to expand into 2026. But smart investors don't just ask how big the economy is. They ask where inside that economy growth is accelerating, because that's where opportunity lives. Over a long investing career, even a small improvement in returns, a few percentage points, can mean the difference between a comfortable future and generational wealth. Most people chase headlines, hot stocks, and social media hype. But by the time something is trending on TV or online, early money has already moved. Serious investors think differently. They study policy shifts, capital flows, technology demand, and where institutions and governments are directing resources. And right now, the United States is going through major economic realignments, driven by supply chains, artificial intelligence, energy demand, national security, and infrastructure investment. These changes aren't opinions, they're already happening. So in this video, we're not talking about speculation, and we're definitely not talking about gambling. We're breaking down from an investor's perspective how to identify economic shifts and how investors can position themselves intelligently as America moves into 2026. If you want to understand how money flows before it becomes obvious, and how investors adapt to a changing U.S. economy, then stay with me, because what comes next matters. Shift number 1. Let's start with something most people never think about, but the economy absolutely depends on it. Strategic minerals. These materials are everywhere. Inside smartphones, advanced technology, industrial equipment, and even national defense systems. For many years, the United States depended heavily on overseas suppliers to meet this demand. But recently, that structure began to change. Trade dynamics, supply chain security concerns, and long-term economic planning have pushed the U.S. toward a new priority: building and strengthening domestic mineral production. This shift isn't theoretical. Policies have already been introduced, funding has already been allocated, and capital is already flowing toward rebuilding parts of this supply chain inside the United States. From an investor's perspective, this matters because industries don't move without money. When resources are redirected, new production facilities are developed, new infrastructure is built, and entire ecosystems form around that demand. That doesn't mean every company wins. It doesn't mean risk disappears. But it does mean one thing. This area of the economy is becoming strategically important, and investors are watching it closely. The key takeaway here is simple. When a sector moves from dependency to priority, capital follows. Shift number 2. Now let's talk about something that affects almost every business, every institution, and increasingly every government system: cybersecurity. Years ago, companies protected their information with locks, keys, and physical storage. Today, everything lives online. Business data, financial records, customer information, intellectual property, all stored digitally, often in cloud-based systems. And in recent years, this shift accelerated even faster. Artificial intelligence tools are now deeply integrated into how people work, how companies operate, and how information is processed. That convenience comes with risk. As more sensitive data moves online, the importance of protecting it increases dramatically. This is why cybersecurity is no longer optional. It's infrastructure. Businesses need it to operate. Governments need it to protect systems. Institutions need it to manage risk. As a result, more resources are being directed towards strengthening digital defenses across the entire economy. From an investor's point of view, this isn't about chasing trends. It's about recognizing necessity. When something becomes essential for operations, compliance, and national systems, it creates long-term demand. And long-term demand is exactly what investors pay attention to. Shift number 3. Energy demand in an AI-driven economy. Now this next shift ties everything together. Energy. Artificial intelligence isn't just software. It runs on physical infrastructure, servers, data centers, processors, and massive computing systems. Every single AI query, every automated task, every cloud-based operation consumes energy. And as AI adoption continues to grow, so does energy demand. That demand isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. At the same time, the United States is focusing on energy reliability and self-sufficiency. This has led to renewed attention on multiple energy sources, from traditional production to newer large-scale solutions capable of supporting data-heavy industries. The important thing for investors to understand is not which energy source wins, but why energy as a sector matters right now. When demand increases across technology, infrastructure, and national priorities, energy becomes a foundation, not a side story. More data centers require more power, more AI usage requires more stability, and that means continued investment into energy production, distribution, and supporting systems. Again, this doesn't remove risk. Markets fluctuate, policies evolve. But from a macro perspective, energy sits at the center of how the modern U.S. economy is evolving. Transition to next part. So far, we've covered 3 major areas where money is actively shifting: strategic minerals, cybersecurity, energy. Each one plays a role in supporting the next phase of economic growth in the United States. Shift 4. Now let's move into a sector that rarely gets attention from everyday investors, but quietly supports some of the biggest changes in healthcare. Biotech. When most people hear biotech, they immediately think about miracle drugs, clinical trials, and risky bets on the next big treatment. But that's not the angle investors are watching right now. Over the last couple of years, many biotech companies slowed down ordering supplies. They already had inventory, so they focused on using what they had instead of buying more. That phase is now changing. As demand normalizes, and as more treatments move into regular use, biotech companies are beginning to restock. At the same time, the way medications are delivered is evolving. More treatments are administered at home, more injections are required, and that creates consistent demand for essential medical supplies. This is what investors often call the picks and shovels side of an industry. No matter which drug becomes popular, these tools are still required. From an investment perspective, that kind of recurring demand is worth paying attention to. Shift in number 5. Now let's talk about artificial intelligence, but not in the way most people do. This is not about betting on which AI company becomes the most popular. This is about infrastructure. Every major technology shift in history needed a physical backbone. The internet needed cables, servers, power systems, and data centers. AI works the same way. Behind every AI tool is a massive network of hardware: data centers, semiconductors, servers, cooling systems, and energy providers. These systems must exist no matter who wins the AI race. That's why billions of dollars are being invested into building and expanding AI infrastructure across the United States.